Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back to bring you the Flameshaper, Devestation, and Preservation hero talents for the War Within. In this video, we're going to go over what the abilities actually are, and then have a discussion with Voulk and Youtee from the Evoker Discord themselves to give their ratings on how these hero talents are shaping up. It starts off with Engulf, which is a 20-second cooldown, and it is an instant heal or damage ability. It engulfs the target in Dragon Flame, damaging or healing them, and for each periodic effect of the target, the effectiveness is increased by 50%. So just having one reversion on the target then boosts the heal of the engulf by 50%. You have a Trailblazer, which causes your hover and deep breath to travel faster, and hover travels 50% further, meaning you can just jump super far and get a lot of extra movement. Shape of Flame causes your tail swipe and wing buffet to scorch enemies and blind them with ash, causing their next attack within 4 seconds to miss. This is a crazy AoE shutdown. Tail swiping mobs into the air to interrupt a whole bunch of casts, and then when they come back down to earth, all of their next casts are going to miss. It's crazy. Traveling Flame. Engulf causes Fire Breath or Dream Breath for preservation to spread to a nearby target. If no valid targets are present, its duration is refreshed. In Kindle, Essence abilities are enhanced with Flame, dealing 20% of healing or damage done as fire over 8 seconds. Conduit of Flame, critical strike chance against targets above 50% health is increased by 10%. You have Burning Adrenaline. Engulf quickens your pulse, reducing the cast time of your next spell by 30%, and it stacks up to 2 charges, meaning after you're casting these engulfs, your follow-up casts are going to be quite a bit faster, which will be very interesting to be able to see. Fan the Flames. Engulf reignites in Kindle, which is again the Essence abilities being enhanced with Flame, extending its duration and effectiveness by 25%. Again, Essence abilities like Reversion or maybe some Emerald Blossom coming into play. Expanded Lungs. Fire Breath damage over time is increased by 20%. And for Preservation, Dream Breath's heal over time is increased by 20%. So with this, it's going to actually relate to some talents a little bit later down in the tree. Really cool defensive here in Life Cinders, where Renewing Blaze also applies to one nearby injured ally when cast. Draconic Instincts, your wounds have a small chance to cauterize, healing you for 30% of damage taken. It occurs more often from attacks that deal high damage. Now, they said it's a nearby injured ally. It would be really cool if it was the closest ally, because then you could like Verdant Embrace or rescue a tank or something like that. And that way you're going to be able to actually apply it to them. So that'd be pretty cool. Oh, good point. Yeah, Reversion's not an Essence ability. I was thinking of Echo. My B. Engulf gains an additional charge and deals 20% increased damage and healing. So keep in mind, Engulf can be an instant heal for Preservation Evokers. It'll have 2 charges, and its effectiveness is increased by every periodic effect you have on your target. So Dream Breath Hots, Reversion Hots, the echoed versions of them can make some incredibly powerful instant heals for that Preservation Evoker. Titanic Precision, Living Flame, Reversion, and Azure Strike crit strikes have a 100% increased chance to trigger Essence Burst. So having more crits, which could also happen on targets that are at higher health, above 50% health, could then feed you more Essence Burst for whatever sort of Essence Spenders that you want to have on hand. And with more Essence Spenders, you are benefiting from things like Enkindle, increasing the healing or damage, or having extra fire, healing, or damage applied to those targets. Now, to cap it off, you have Consume Flame, which for Devestation, when Engulf will consume 8 seconds of fire breath from the target, detonating it and damaging all nearby targets equal to 300% of the amount consumed. So 300% of 8 seconds of fire breath, reduced beyond 5 targets. And so Engulf consumes 8 seconds of Dream Breath, detonating it and healing all nearby targets equal to 300% of the amount consumed, reduced beyond 5 targets. So you Dream Breath, you engulf that target, it consumes the Dream Breath, and then bursts it and explodes it to produce additional healing. And now to join me for going over all of the talents and what they're really going to be looking for, we've got Voulk and Youtee, courtesy of Questionably Epic, and of course the Wormrest Temple Evoker Discord. So what's going on, guys? Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Big day today. We
It
did not
is.
get Ruby Adept. We got something quite different.
Right, so they just ended up changing the name from what it originally was. I think I have the chart around here somewhere, where they just said, hey, JK, it's no longer Ruby Adept, it's going to be Flameshaper. So how does Flameshaper look right now?
Well, it's a cooler name, so they've started well.
All right.
There's a lot we don't know about the tree yet, but it's positive at first glance. We're gonna have to wait until alpha to know for sure, but it's better than what I expected. To be honest, I expected a devastation tree with like Prez tacked on, like some of the specs have kind of felt, but if anything, this almost feels like a preservation tree with devastation tacked on. So we take those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very happy reading through the tree and not seeing that we were just an afterthought of it. So
Yeah. And so
small wins.
Yeah, exactly. And so starting it off, I don't know if I would call it a small win, but Preservation is going to have access to an instant heal on a low cooldown, and with later talents, it's going to have multiple charges. What was your initial reaction after seeing what has been desired for an incredibly long time for Prez?
I think we're hoping that it is instant. I think that you're right, but they leave just enough to the imagination in these notes that you can't be 100% sure.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I think that the possibility of an instant cast heal is big. We're going to cover a few other things soon, I'm sure, like whether you can echo it or not. But if you consider stuff like lifebind ramps, where you're just like attaching yourself to most of the raid and ramming yourself with as much healing as possible, another instant cast button to fit into that is really nice.
2 charges of it too.
Right. And so it looks like it's really heavily synergizing off of as many additional periodic effects that you can sort of stack onto it. And you have a few different synergistic abilities that are encouraging you to be spending more of your essence spenders on things like Echo. Is that going to be right? Where you want to make sure you're echoing Dream Breaths or Reversions to get more output out of your engulfs?
Yeah, probably. The big question that's going to linger until we probably have alpha is whether you can echo this ability itself. So you can echo every other heal that Preservation has, and so you'd assume you could do it for this one too.
Mm-hmm.
But whether you can or not changes how you use it a lot.
Okay.
And so you can't echo it, which I think is probably going to end up the better play style. I don't know if we'll get it or not, but I think that would be better. Then yeah, you'll put out lots of hots, and then you'll blow a lot of them up for big AoE healing.
And just spot healing, which is
True.
The spot healing is very nice. Like if you're on Farak right now and one of your mid ramp, you've got TA out, you're echoing, someone gets chopped down to 20%, you don't really have any answers.
Mm-hmm.
They're dead before you can cast Living Flame. You don't really want to interrupt your ramp to cast Reversion or something like that, although it's an option. So most of the time you just kind of time dilation them and pray. So it'll be nice to have a button that kind of fills that role.
Yeah, and so the way it looks to me is that you would be wanting to have Dream Breaths out as frequently as you could for when you're using your engulfs to be able to sort of tee those things up together. Because Dream Breaths cooldown is what, 25 seconds or so?
30 seconds, yeah.
30
seconds. And then you're having 2 charges of 20-second cooldowns on hand so that you could put out those Dream Breaths, then get some engulfs to sort of synergize both spot healing and AoE burst. It's almost like a chain heal of old, don't you think, where you're having a lot of healing going into that primary target, and then it's exploding and sort of bursting for extra healing around your allies.
It's uncapped as well. Like it's square root scaling probably. So you blow up a Dream Breath, you could heal the entire raid if they put a good range on it.
Yeah. Don't even talk to me about range with Evoker. We'll be here all day. I think that's another thing too, is we recently had patch notes for Evoker talking about some of the struggles they had. And to sort of make up for it, they said, oh, we're going to help you maneuver and have better defensives. Now we have something like Trailblazer, where Hover and Deep Breath are traveling faster, Hover's traveling further. Do you think this is a sign that they're going to be sticking to this reduced range?
You can take this one. The range question makes me angry.
I certainly hope not. I don't think any amount of mobility you could give us could make up for being out of range of dispels on Farak.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, we've talked about Trailblazer for a while now. Trailblazer can actually be kind of more of a negative than it could be a positive.
Right.
Because 50% further distance on your hover. Hover already goes very far, and it's kind of uncontrollable. Like, sometimes you just want to hover in place, and you accidentally press W, and you go shooting forward, and you die to a boss mechanic. This, on Farak specifically, I could see myself flying off the edge.
Yeah.
P1 with like
it's more positive
wildfires.
than negative, but yeah, at least it's a choice node. So if it's
Yeah.
a problem, you can drop
Right.
it. But yeah, I
And
think it's.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think we got two really good hover talents, and I think they're both in Chrono Warden.
Yep.
I mean, you also have an insane M+ talent with Shape of Flame. Like, let's talk about that. You have ridiculous mob shutdown now.
Yeah,
It's definitely being able to CDR these abilities as well. Being able to maybe, like, for example, in Throne of Tides, the people that cast the big shields on people, possibly being able to make them miss that, completely negating
I
a
think
mechanic is
I think it's going to be
impossible.
melee attacks.
You think it's just gonna be melee attacks?
Yeah, I think miss basically always applies to melee, and it's still good, but
Well, if you're blinding the target, I thought it would work for only targets that you can actually hit them with the tail swipe or wing buffet. Like I was thinking of the like Gilbans in the gauntlet area. If you like tail swipe them, send them up into the air, like the spears would miss, or the casts of their.
I hope
like,
you're right.
their
I hope
bolts
you're
would
right,
miss.
but
I just don't think it would work on elites or boss fights. That's the way I read it. At
no,
least.
for sure, yeah.
It'd bring
That'd be funny, whack for rack with it, and just skip a wave of dispels or something.
If only.
it'd bring preservation utility instead of just augmentation, because augmentation doesn't have, you know, any access to this tree. So it'd be cool if it has a better way of working, maybe with some elites, but like definitely probably not bosses.
I suspect this will be one of those like utility nodes that most trees have that end up being pretty low impact, but yeah.
We'll see. All right. So
It's
let's
to be
talk about the
tested.
greater depth, really, that we have of the tree. What kind of gameplay are we expecting? Let's just assume that we're not able to echo and engulf. What sort of gameplay would you guys be expecting for a raid environment to best take advantage of this ability?
I think the two charges. So if you can't echo it, then Lifebind becomes quite a substantial play. I could see you stacking yourself with hots, which is quite easy to do, and you can control almost all of them except for Dream Breath, which I guess you could also technically do with very careful positioning. So you've got 4+ hots on yourself going into damage. You ramp on the raid, you press Verdant Embrace probably on yourself, so you're in a Lifebind ramp. You now hit 1 or 2 of these on yourself, and they're all healing for like 250 to 300% more at instant cast speed. Instant cast means you can also fit Spirit Bloom rank 1 in there. That's a lot of healing.
You're also
Okay, so-
exploding the Dream Breath through the Lifebind as well. It could be
And the best part here is it feels like a big ramp, but actually none of that has a very long cooldown. The longest cooldown thing there you have is if you want 2 charges, then sure, you've got to wait the 40 seconds. And if you want Dream Breath on yourself, then you've got to wait 30 seconds for that. But you can do this very often. You're doing it more often than Yulon or anything like that.
Yeah, okay, so the idea is spreading echoes specifically to make sure that you're spreading life binds as a result, mashing tons of healing into yourself to then reflect that healing onto the entire raid.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
It's quite similar to what we do now. You're gaining an extra button to do it. And it's probably flexible enough a button that a lot of the time you could even spare one during your ramp. Like if it doesn't echo, you could throw one out on someone that's low, like your Disc Priest trying to waddle the next mechanic or something like that.
What are you trying to say here?
Look, we do all we can to help our fellow healers.
I love it. I love it. So talk to me about the changes that we had for preservation. This is what 10.2.5, right? Where reversion was having a chance to trigger Essence Burst. It's very new, right?
Yeah, that
It's
was
very new, yeah.
part of the 10.2.5 changes that we actually have a video out on. But
Ooh. Give me a link after this.
But the changes that we got in 10.2.5 were probably some of the best changes that we could have gotten outside of range. It allowed for reversion to be a button that we never pressed in either build to now being a button that we press in both builds. And it made Grace Period, a talent that we were forced to use in a Blossoms build and had no value in it, actually has value because now we're echoing reversions and spreading the healing buff everywhere and gaining essence bursts from those reversions. So we gained a lot of healing.
So it's the feedback loop of echoing reversions are critting, and then you get more essence burst to spread more echoes to spread more reversions.
Well, reversion doesn't need. Oh, never mind. Sorry. Reversion ticks themselves do not give you essence burst. It's just the initial cast.
Got it.
So it's basically like using your temporal anomaly, consuming the echoes with living flame for procs, except now you're doing it with reversion. and you're getting more healing bonus, and about the same amount of procs.
Got it. And so you also have potential with the targeting for Conduit of Flame, where you have additional crit strike chance if you're placing those reversions, or maybe even those echoes, on higher health targets to then cast that reversion on them. Since
That node's just going to be very good in general, because in the modern healing game, like, a lot of your healing is done to targets above 50% health,
Right.
like 90% of it most of the time. And reversion itself, which is our strongest scaling spell with crit, is even more likely to tick on people at high health. And so we should get very good uptime on that. It's kind of funny, actually, because Devastation's going to get about 50%, right? Like, the boss is above 50% health about half the time.
Yeah.
But we're going to get like 90% uptime on that, probably.
Oh my god.
Okay, so that's pretty good. The only downside is that the Chrono Warden version is just like a flat 10% intellect, basically, which is even better. But we'll see how tuning goes on that.
Right, so I was going to ask, we now have both of the builds available for preservation. Does one seem a little bit better suited to raids or Mythic Plus, or are they both sort of hybrids, and you kind of have to see which one's going to win out?
I think they both do both very well. Like, it's not like some where you go, okay, this is going to be way better in Mythic Plus. I think both of them do good things in each.
Both of them are definitely very good for
I think
raid.
I'd prefer this tree in Mythic Plus, honestly.
Yeah.
I think adding an instant cast heal is very convenient, even though you can often get away with using reversion as a spot heal in Mythic Plus. And you can also use it offensively here. You don't get all of the benefits, but you don't have to use this as a heal button. You can also use this as a DPS button.
True. Yeah, you have the option.
So I think that'll be quite fun to play with in Mythic Plus.
And so we were talking about Lifebind builds with something like Flameshaper. Does Chrono Warden also have a significant change to the builds that you would be playing with? So let's just say, right, as an example, if these were perfectly tuned equally, it could kind of come down to just which playstyle that you would like to mess around with.
So yeah, this one is more, right now, would be kind of more spreading your house out and being more Lifebind based. Chrono Warden has our tier piece from Season 2 that makes it so our Spirit Bloom has a large hot based upon how much it does. I think in Chrono Warden tree it's 30%. So that tree would be more just big ramps for Spirit Bloom. This tree would be, you have some spot healing, but also you're doing a lot of Lifebind, which increases your survivability a ton as well.
Both trees have a lot more for Echo build than Blossom builds as well.
Yeah.
Just for those who play Blossom builds. Like, you get a little bit here, your Blossom turns into a hot. That's kind of nice. The problem is you don't have a lot of other hots out, since you're not like echoing a big Dream Breath or a big Reversion or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the big weakness of this build right now? Is it certain talents that are kind of bad? We kind of just have to know more about how they work? Or are there certain struggles for certain types of boss fights that might be bad for Flameshaper Evokers?
I think there's enough flexibility in there that you could do well anywhere that Evoker can do well right now, but you're not necessarily unlocking new strengths that you don't have now. You'll be able to express them in slightly different ways, but most Evoker weaknesses will still be Evoker weaknesses, outside of maybe spot healing being slightly better. I don't know what kind of a size they're going to slap on the base heal here. I'm kind of thinking it'll be quite low, and a lot of power will just be from consuming the Dream Breath and echoing it out. But we'll see.
Okay. And what is your favorite part about this build?
I think the number of combos it opens up. What do you reckon, Youtee? I think the number of combos it opens up, whether you can echo it or not, will be very fun to play around with. Like, some trees, you kind of know how they'll play already, right? Whereas there's some experimentation you can do here, some different setups you can do depending on the situation you're in. And I think that's way more interesting. Like, you're unlocking gameplay here.
Yeah, you have to also add into the fact that we have stasis, which allows you to store charges of our engulf here. So one thing that I was kind of talking about earlier was maybe we echo out Dream Breaths onto people, spread echoes out onto those people, and then engulf them. And that spreads, that consumes a bunch of your Dream Breaths that are echoed out, and they explode into more Dream Breaths. And there's potentially combos that you could do with stasis where you're just exploding Dream Breaths everywhere and spreading them around everywhere, which could be potentially very, very strong, and also just
very satisfying
cool.
too. Like, this could be a very satisfying tree to play if it all fits together and works when we get alpha.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's been a minute since I played some Prez. We're talking about hitting Stasis, which stores your next 3 spells, hitting Dream Breath to spread around those hots, casting 2 Engulfs to then trigger the explosions of Consume Flame, and now
And
you
then-
have those 3 abilities stored in your Stasis, and then you can activate them again for even more burst.
It's potentially, yeah. It could be a
Ooh.
massive amount of healing in a very short window. And this could work in raid too. Now you're just spreading dream breaths around everywhere over the raid, and you're exploding them. And it in my mind, that just sounds super fun, and I'm very excited to start testing this. Even if it doesn't allow it to be echoed, that still works. You're still exploding dream breaths, still spreading them. But if this ability can be echoed and the effects of the ability go through the echo, we could have some very, very complex but very fun gameplay.
Okay, complexity is an interesting point. For other specs, we've kind of seen, maybe this is some bloat in abilities, or maybe this is cognitive bloat because you have more to track. Preservation, notably, and Invoker in general, doesn't have too many active abilities. So what do you think about the challenge of managing this hero talents? Is this
I think adding a new
acceptable?
ability was by far the best way to go. Like, my concern about the tree is that we don't have any fire abilities that are very interesting, and so building a tree around a fire theme, well, that could have been really bad. And so instead they just
Yeah.
add an ability, because we don't really have that many abilities. We've got a few abilities that have 100 effects on each of them instead.
Mhm.
And so I think this is actually, preservation is quite complicated to play, I think. Like, I think that it's easy to misunderstand, and there's lots of little bits and pieces. And this will add some of those, but it at least does it through a new button, so they're a little bit, how to put it, they're all
an
encompassed in
acceptable-
this one button, and so if you don't want that extra complexity, you can just not engage.
That's true. Yeah, because Chrono Warden doesn't have any extra buttons,
Exactly, Chrono Warden doesn't have any extra abilities,
right? Yeah.
and
The
so I
one
think
thing
this
that-
is a good way to go.
When I
like
first
that.
read Flameshaper, I was like, what are they going to do? They're going to make our fire breath heal more? Are they going to make living flame like our main heal? Like, what's going to go on here? And I was very worried for a minute, but seeing the first thing say we get a new ability was like, it took a million pounds off my shoulder. I was very
And the entire
happy.
tree is basically based around this ability. Like, even the small power increases kind of relate to it in a bit, like Dream Breath healing increasing. That's good by itself, but it's really there so that you consume it with Engulf and heal for even more.
I love that.
We
Okay,
also
so
have combos like, very quickly, we have Call of
Yeah.
Ysera, you might remember, which increases Dream Breath healing by 40%.
Mhm.
So put that out, consume that, now your Engulf Explosion is also doing 40% more.
That's right. Okay, so you're increasing the healing of that Dream Breath by using the Verdant Embrace in advance, and then you're also having the extra synergy from Consume Flame. That's a good point. Yeah.
It's just like sick combos like that will be very
Yeah.
fun to play with, I think.
I wonder if the buffs travel through Traveling Flame as well. It could be very...
Oh yeah,
Very
that's the
cool.
other thing. It's a very minor node, but I think it'll feel very good. When you engulf, the speed of your next cast is increased. And one of the biggest complaints a lot of
yeah.
people have about preservation is some of your long casts are just very damn long.
Mhm.
And I don't know how the combo will fit in. I don't think you're going to be able to engulf right before you Spirit Bloom every time. But just the fact that you could is really nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is your general rating that you guys both have for Flameshaper?
I'm giving this an A-.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I will give it a B+ if it cannot be echoed, and I will give this probably an A to an A+ based on tuning if it can be echoed. I want to say S,
Ooh.
but there's a lot of tuning that can screw stuff up. But thematically, I want to say A+ if it can be echoed.
Okay, and so what's the biggest thing that Blizzard needs to like relate to you guys, or what's the big thing they need to make clear early on for this talent tree to be a banger?
Echo, whether you can echo it or not is important. I wish they'd just add that to the post.
Okay.
The only other thing the tree is kind of missing is the defensive capabilities are a little awkward compared to some. Like, some of them, there's like a defensive node in basically every tree, and some are very straightforward, like you press your defensive and get an absorb, or it DRs more, or something like that. But this is weird. This is when you press Renewing Blaze, someone else gets it as well, which isn't really a defensive for us at all. And the other one is your Renewing Blaze has a chance to heal you for slightly more sometimes, and so it's just... That's it's a cool node. I like giving Renewing Blaze to someone else. I think that's awesome, but it's not really a defensive, is it?
Yeah.
Depends
One
who
other
you ask.
thing to kind of note about this tree that we didn't really touch on was Titanic Precision. When we've so whenever you cast your Living Flame Reversion as your strike, if it crits, it has 100% increased chance to trigger Essence Burst. When you cast Reversion, it doesn't actually do any healing right away. So, and we don't get Essence Burst from Azure Strike, so both of those already don't work. So that could be something they could.
Yeah, the
kind of picked
assumption is
up.
it's going to do a crit roll, like a hidden crit roll, and then
Yeah.
if you crit, then you get the extra. But it really reads like the spell itself critting, and so that could probably be clarified
Yeah.
to just say like a chance equal to your crit chance to increase it by 100% or whatever.
Makes sense. Any other
And
final
that's-
thoughts you
we're
guys have?
assuming that's how it works.
Yeah.
No other real final thoughts. I think it's a really good start for a tree, and it's definitely one of the better ones I've seen across all classes so far.
Yeah.
Not speaking for any Devastation Evokers, purely
Yeah.
for Prez.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to be unhappy?
I don't know. The feeling earlier wasn't quite as positive as it was for Preservation, but
Yeah.
I don't know Dev very well, and so I won't speak for them.
Makes sense. All right,
Yeah,
any final thoughts, UT?
I'm very happy with the tree overall. I think this could be some of the most fun gameplay I've ever had in WoW if it works properly. In terms of it echoing or not echoing, I don't want to say works properly because it's going to work properly eventually. But if it works how I think it in my head, it could be super, super fun. Just exploding Dream Breaths, spreading them around. Yeah, defensiveness would be a little better, but that's all I got.
All right, I love it. Make sure you link me that video you talked to me about before. But otherwise,
Yeah.
thanks so much, guys, for joining me for the combo.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks for
you.
having us.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
See ya.
See ya.